Happy Friday, everybody.
Woo!
Hello. And
happy
Wine
National Wine Day.
Yeah. Do you believe that? It is actually National Wine Day.
National Wine Day.
National Wine Day. How does that happen? Like, I
know. And it just happens to be that we're doing Wine Down on National Wine Day. So it's a beautiful thing.
It is a beautiful thing. It is a beautiful thing.
So happy National Wine Day, everybody.
Happy National Wine Day. And I'm just looking at the fact that Be Live has once again changed how this is all laid out.
Is it? Does it look different on your end?
It's all on the left, and so that just kind of got me a little surprised. How are you, Gina? How was your week? How was your week? You had a busy week with all of this
GDPR, the General Data Protection. And you know what? I did a Facebook Live this morning on it in our DIY social group. So if you have questions about it or you have no idea if it applies to you, just go into the DIY social. Just go to that group, facebook.com/groups/DIY social. And I did a thing on it. So yeah, like that's keeping us going crazy this week and trying to get all that information out. And you know, I told everybody it's like Y2K. We're all filling up our gallon tanks of water and gas. And you know what? Tomorrow we're going to wake up and everything's just fine.
Yeah, it'll all be fine. I read an article this morning that was talking about how small businesses are reacting to this and are overreacting, should I say. And there certainly are some things that we all need to do, but we all do not need to email our lists and say, please resubscribe. We don't need to do anything like that. But you're the expert, Gina, so you do know what to do. Now, Bob says, Happy Wine Day. Happy Wine Day, Bob.
Yes.
Yeah. And Jer asks a very good question, which is, why can't every day be National Wine Day?
Yeah.
And in our house, it kind of is.
It is.
And I was, Gina, you and I were just talking about this post that I made on Facebook, and I asked, what are the 3 most important life questions we should continue to ask ourselves? And the first one we got was from a friend of ours named Andy James, and Andy asked, Neen's husband. And Andy. Yeah, and Andy asked, what bottle of wine should I open next? So
a very good life question to ask.
I think it was a very good life question. And another buddy of mine, Alan Stein, what should I watch next on Netflix? So there were some others that made my head hurt more, but those two were I check. I got those. I got
lots of deep questions. That's such an interesting question, because what would one of your life questions be?
Well, I was struggling with that, which is why I asked the question, and I thought I would get some inspiration. I obviously, the first one for me would be, am I happy? And that may sound very self-centered. A lot of the questions that I got on the list were, who can I serve? And am I, no. The first one is, am I happy? Because and I don't mean happy in a lighthearted kind of sense. I mean, am I happy? Am I in the right place doing the right thing? Am I doing it the right way? Do I enjoy getting up in the morning? Am I spending enough time with the people that I love, which is a huge question, because the answer to that one lately is no. And so if that's not settled, for me, then everything else is kind of irrelevant. I can't do any of the other things if I don't feel like I'm settled. What about you, Gina? What would one of those top 3 questions be for you?
Well, it's interesting because this week, one of the books I'm listening to right now is called Living with the Monks. And I think it's interesting because he talked about having a life resume instead of a business resume. Yeah, and I posted that, and I thought that's kind of one of the things, a question I think I would ask is, am I doing things that are meaningful? Not necessarily always serving others, but am I doing something that's meaningful in a way that when I look at the end of my life, it has made me feel fulfilled, happy, joyful, which includes, serving others, but it also includes just doing things that I really love to do. What's on that life resume, or more importantly, what's not on my life resume that should be there? when I look back, am I going to say I should have spent more time doing X, Y, or Z? What's missing from my life resume, not my work resume, but my life resume? So I think that's a good question I would put on there.
Yeah, and it brings us to kind of the theme for today, which is it's all about the layers. And Gina, and it's about transition, and I posted about this in the Facebook group and Influential Innovators. And Gina, you and I kind of discovered this phrase, and I think we alluded to it last week when we went on an art retreat last year together, because we both do mixed media art. It truly is all about the layers. But I think that has a very and no pun intended or pun intended, a deep meaning, a deeper meaning,
right?
Which is that we, to some extent, I know that life can throw things our way. I know there are people listening who've had, spouses who passed away, or they've gotten very sick. I mean, those are the kinds of things that those are layers we don't really have any control over. Life throws those our way. But I do believe that we have control over those layers. And so that's why I asked the question about the 3 most important questions, because how do you evaluate what layer you're in? How do you look at it and go, what are the questions we should be asking about the layer that we're in? Helen answered it this morning, and I told her that her questions might appear on Wind Down today, because she said, where do I come from? What the hell am I doing here, and where am I going? And I think that it's all about the layers in our lives. And I think that we are complex beings, and our stories are made up about layers. But I think what's difficult is to remember that we have control over those layers. And if we're not happy with the layer that we're on, throw a layer of paint or something.
And I think that's a good point, is sometimes we're not sometimes things happen out of our control. For example, while you're painting, last week I did this. I was painting and I spilled some paint on the piece that I was working on because I was being very sloppy and I wasn't being careful and didn't have the lid on, which is kind of like things happening with our health or something out of our control, and something gets spilled on our life that we don't like. But where we do have control is now, what will we put over it, or what will we incorporate with that to change the way it currently looks? So that, you're right, we have control over where we go forward, even when things happen out of our control. So a layer could be something that happens in our business. A layer could be a place where we're stuck in our business that we don't like. A layer could be something happening in our health that we don't like. But what are we going to put on that to change it?
What are we going to put on it? Or I love what you just said, is how are we going to incorporate it? Remember last year when you and I were at this art retreat, and I did something and it turned into green. And I hate green. There are a few little types of greens like the turquoise. I do not like that kind of forest. Don't like it. And I looked down and there was all of this.
You go, I hate this. Yeah.
And you remember I said, I hate this. And then what I said to myself was, I need to learn to own the green. How do I own the green? And again, I think that's very powerful in our lives. And whatever saying works for you is, how do I own the green? If there's stuff going on in our lives that we really don't, it's not like we can add a new layer and walk away from it. It's there to stay. How do you own the green, or whatever way of looking at it that works for you? And I ended up with a piece that I actually really love.
So beautiful.
But I stopped fighting the green, and I stopped trying to cover the green, and I owned the green and integrated it into the picture. So I guess I would ask those listening or even listening on the replay, what are the things going on in your life right now that you might be fighting in your business or your personal life? And I always hate the business life or personal life. For heaven's sakes, we have one life.
Yeah.
And particularly those of us who run a business, we have one life. It's not divided into two. But what are the things going on in your life right now that you might need, that you're fighting, that you're trying to get rid of or cover up, when in fact maybe the question to ask is, how do I own the green? How do I look at it and make it part of something lovely?
That's a key piece, is you didn't leave it, you didn't stop where it was.
No.
And say, okay, I'm going to have to learn to love this. You looked at it and said, how do I own it So owning it means, how do I accept where I am? And maybe how do I change slightly by adding another layer to which I think that's such a great analogy for our businesses, because we will go through periods where we just aren't having the fun because we're having to do something that's like, but maybe it's because we're doing this because we want to get to this other place. I just wish there was a way to teleport there and get there instead of having to do this other stuff to get to where we need to go, whether it's writing a book, whether it's, whatever, putting together programs that we're doing. It's like, how do we add a layer, or is that the layer? Is that really the layer that needs to go next? Which goes back to your video of the, are you now I'm drawing a blank, committer or an auditioner? Maybe it's, we need to rethink before we commit.
I absolutely think so. And the other thing that occurred to me as I was thinking about this, it's all about the layers thing that you and I have been talking about for months now, is that for those who don't know mixed media art really is about the layers. You add a layer and you add a layer, but as in any kind of art piece or any kind of creative endeavor, the more layers you put on, the more you get to the point where you think a little more about the layers. There's a little less, you're not necessarily going to do a complete layer the way you might have 20 years ago. Maybe now it's a little tweak, and I don't want to start to sound like a dinosaur, but with with the big thing that shall remain nameless coming up this summer, I have been doing a lot of thinking about it, and the fact that I have in my mind, certainly when I found the speaking business, 15 years ago now, and had quite a patchwork quilt journey to arrive there, and thought, okay, I'm done. This is it. Now I'm going to tweak. I'm going to put little tweaky layers on it. And it's not that I'm going to stop working, but this is the final transition. And it has occurred to me lately that was a very ridiculous thing to think. Yeah. Because there's been a lot of layers, and maybe there is another huge sweeping layer or two or three that comes in, or are we happy enough with where we are that we really think what we're doing is now to add the little touches, whether it's legacy or other things, because there does come a point in any work of art or any creative endeavor when it's time to stop.
Yeah, and you do need to know, okay, this looks really good where it is. I'm really done. Good.
I can now not just add another layer, but perhaps start another piece.
Start a new piece, which in our businesses, you look at people who have completely made a shift and they've started a new piece.
That's kind of where I am.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
Secret to the people listening now, not that I would share that with everyone except everyone who's listening or might ever listen in the future, but it is that perception of this piece might just be done. And it's like, is there a new piece? I mean, whenever I'm working on something, I usually have 2 or 3 things going at the same time. Right now I have 3 pieces I'm working on, because while one is drying, I'm working on this one. Or I get to a place on this one, I'm just like, I feel stuck. Save it. I'll come back to it and start another piece. And I think that's sometimes, which goes, it's interesting, the theme of all of our things we talked about, or maybe it was, I don't remember if it was a wind down where we were talking about being restless. Yes. And, am I just feeling restless, or is this really time to squiggle and shift? And it's such an interesting thing within our life and our business of when we feel the need to add another layer of something. And that layer, we think about what are some of the layers that we can add even in our current business. Could be writing a book, which is interesting because I've been on this whole thing of legacies that we're leaving. And, I was talking about the whole thing of your life resume. What's on your life resume? What's missing from your life resume? What do we need to still get out of us to leave that legacy, whether it's for our family? I feel like blogging is so important for everybody, because I finally wrote another blog post on my personal blog the other day, and I got
so many people that responded and subscribed to my blog, which I thought, wow, not that many people have subscribed to my business blog. And I got tons of response because I was just writing personal. But then I thought, when I'm gone, 3 more generations from now, wouldn't it be cool if my great-grandchildren would be like, I want to know more about my great-grandmother, and they found my blogs. They had that to, and I started thinking of that, going, we no longer pass down stories. So in our business, what are we passing down of our business wisdom to the next generation of leaders? And then even personally, what stories need to be told still? What pieces of us still need to be done? I've even contemplated, I need to go on a mission trip. I've been feeling like I need to go on a mission trip to go somewhere and do something that needs to be told late. I don't know. I've been feeling that same thing as you, of there's a layer that needs to be brought forth.
And I think too, and not losing sight of the fact that we talk about innovation and about creativity and creating experiences, and that it's hard to be creative if you're stuck. It's hard to think differently if you're always looking at the same things. And you and I were talking a few minutes ago about taking time to think, which is what I've been doing for the last couple of days. We don't stop enough. We don't stop enough to think about what that next layer could be. Or is the piece done and is it time to move on? Ellen wrote, Reading Integral Spirituality by Ken Wilber. Very good reading about layers. Well, thanks, Ellen. I will definitely have a look at that, because I think that we all at some point need to stop. And I'll go back to something I said a few episodes ago, is it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to stop. It's okay to stop and think.
Yeah.
People view thinking as something that is not working. Like I'm going to stop working to think, which is a pastime, which is a privilege, which is something that's kind of warm and fuzzy. But you know what? As innovators, if we don't stop to think, regardless of what the next layer is, there is no creativity if we don't stop to think and to make connections that perhaps we hadn't made before.
It's interesting. This morning, I recorded a podcast. I don't know if people know Chip Lutz. If not, you need to listen. It sounds like a shameless plug, but it's really not. My podcast, The Journey, I interviewed him today. It'll be on Monday's podcast. But he talked about a period in his career, and this was within the last 10 years, where he felt really stuck because he had lost a big contract that he had. And all of a sudden he was like, I don't know what to do. And he took a part-time job somewhere. So most people were like, oh my gosh, I would never stoop to that, or I would never do that. And he said, not only was it something he had to do, but he looked at it as, this is a period in my career that I just need to pause, and I need to take this side layer. And he said it brought freshness back to his business. It brought him back with a new sense of purpose. And he learned a lot while he was doing that, of kind of what happens back in the real world. And now his business is doing really well. And it was just interesting. I thought, what a great way to look at that shift that he made in a period of time in his business, where he was like, he could just shut the door and lock it, or he could just press pause.
And of course, the great Pat Katz, who's a dear friend of mine and a wonderful speaker and part of the CAPS community, her whole body of work is around the pause and taking the pause. And we don't pause. We're constantly multitasking. We're constantly trying to do several things at once. And the reality is that our brains at some point, or at least I can only speak for myself, our brains at some point go, do that? I need a break.
Yeah. Well, and it's one of those times too, when when we talk about layers and art, sometimes we're looking at someone else's piece has 22. I mean, we're in that class we took with Seth Apter, we're looking at ours going, oh my gosh, mine doesn't look good at all. And then we look at his, and it's like, his is beautiful. And he's got this, but his has like 28 layers on it. And ours had 4 layers on it. And, we're sometimes comparing. Yeah. That's true. But sometimes we compare where we are to where
Yes.
someone else is at a different layer. And we don't even know that they've done 18 layers already. We look at it and go, mine doesn't look like theirs.
Yes, mine, exactly. And mine doesn't look like theirs, and maybe looking like theirs isn't even the ultimate. Shouldn't actually be the ultimate goal. It should be that it looks like you. But I do think that from an innovation standpoint, ideas have layers too.
Yeah.
You come up with an idea, and then you add a layer, and then you take away a layer. And the 5S solution is a great way, for example, and that was a shameless plug. The 5S solution is a great way to look at what might be missing in terms of your layers. So as we innovate and as we think about things, and what I've discovered over the last couple of days is literally just sitting and thinking, not reading, I'm not taking anything in. I am just sitting, writing, thinking, and seeing what happens. Is that there are so many layers in our lives. There's so many layers in our ideas. And as you alluded to earlier, sometimes we think that next layer has to be X, whatever it is, because that's what everybody else says that next layer
should
has
be.
to be.
Yeah.
But this ain't anybody else's life. This is yours. And
I
it's
think sometimes there's an idea or something that you need to bring forth that, because you don't have time to bring this forth, you push it back here, and it's almost like a blockage to anything else happening, because this thing it needs to be birthed. And it's interesting because I keep thinking of a big thing that I want to get done. And I just don't have time, because I know it's going to take time, and I'm going to have to retreat back to get it done. And so it just keeps being pushed to the side. And I know it's a huge layer to life, a life layer. And sometimes I think that could get in our way of being more innovative in our business. Is we do have an idea that needs to come forth, but we don't have time to commit to it. And therefore we get stuck.
Or we don't make the time, because here's the thing, and this goes back, and there's a lot of great comments here. So Bob and Elaine, hold on 2 seconds. I will pull your comments up because you said some great things. But what if you own the green? So for example, I know where you are. There's something I want to get done. I want to get the book done. But then I think, how do I write the book and still create new content and moderate the group and drive my speaking business and do all of these other things? But it's occurring to me as I listen to you, if you own the green, for example, what if I just said, I am retreating to write the book, and let everybody know that, because we want to do so much at the same time, but the reality is, and it almost goes back to audition commit, there's only so much you can do well at once.
Right.
And if we take the time and get that thing, whatever that thing is for you, get it done, then stopping and getting it done, pausing, which is also not a bad thing, and it's okay, pausing with the other things to get it done might be the smart decision. Now, hold on here, because there's so many great comments. Elaine, one of your comments showed up 3 times, so I'm only going to show it once, because it looks like the same comment. It did show up 3 times, but Elaine says, business heritage, I would think it's a legacy of a group, of a generation. It would be too much stress to think that you would leave heritage all by yourself to an entire society. It's a great point. I'm not sure that's what you meant, Gina. I think you were just talking about your personal stories and your personal legacy, but this is a great point.
I think as a business as well, what knowledge do I bring with me to the grave or to retirement that I really should get out first, to leave to that next, maybe not to the world. Well, maybe I think it's for the world, but not, but I'm talking more personal legacy of things that we used to be a society that shared those stories more, whether it was in our business or at home, and we no longer do that. Yeah.
Bob says midday in this weather, and isn't the weather beautiful finally? I often head to the park for a walk. Just noticed in a conversation this morning how much of that time generates creative ideas need to take a break and pause. And that's it.
True. Yeah.
You can't create space in your brain, and Bob, you figured out you can't create space in your brain. There's no room for anything else to come in. And I guess the question would be, what's standing between where we are and where we want to be? How do we create some of that space?
Hmm.
Jim Coffey says, I think knowing when something is complete is crucial. Absolutely.
It is.
The best restaurateurs sell their businesses when they are at their peak in popularity before they go stale or decline. As I said to you once already today, Jim, get out of my head. It's getting crowded in here already, Jim.
She's got a lot of voices in there, and then Jim's voice is now taking over.
I'm in good company with you in there, but it is getting a little crowded.
I love it.
No, it is. When is it time to say this part piece is done? Doesn't mean we're not going to take any of the learning from that piece into something else. But
well, and I just had a thought too, because there's two things. I feel like there's two big, I'll call them blockages. One is I feel like I need to launch this coaching thing that I keep talking about. I keep wanting to spend more time doing it. I don't have time. So I've pushed that back. But then now I've been thinking I have this personal memoir that I'd love to get going. That whole piece of my story. I would love to get that out and write it as a personal legacy. And I have pushed that as well. I wonder, sometimes by doing either one, it may change the other.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And sometimes putting it off is what we need to do because it's the universe's way of telling us we're not ready yet. But then it just gets to the point where we don't make the time. And I have the time is a phrase I always have an issue with. Right. We all have the same amount of time. What are we doing with that time? And I'm not saying that what we're doing with it isn't important, but at some point you make the time. And so I guess what I would like to ask the people listening is there, share with us. I mean, I've talked about the book. I also want to go on a humanitarian trip. I also want to work on my art and figure out some way to put all those pieces together. You have a memoir you want to write, coaching program you want to launch. Help us out there, people who are listening today. Is there something that's on your radar, something that you feel very powerful, very, very passionately about that you want to get done that for now is waiting in the wings?
And it might just be a layer on your current art piece.
Yes.
It may be a new project. It may be a new piece of art. Yeah.
I know, Ellen, because I've known you and I know how long you've been working on your project. I know that as you work through this, there are more and more layers on your family project and families around the world. And that's where you will stay, at least for now, and create layers. Jim, I get a sense you might be thinking that this piece may or may not be complete, and thinking about what's next. Bob, what I know from you and from what I see in your interaction in the groups and on the posts is you seem to be moving into some speaking, and that seems to be exciting and wonderful. And I don't know whether that's a new layer or if it's a new piece, but I'd love to hear from people.
Yeah, I know. It inspires me to hear other people. You're going, okay, sometimes you feel like, am I the only one that just is feeling this with my current piece that I'm looking at? But the more people I talk to, the more we're all in that same boat.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Jim is laughing. This is with Jim's comment. I think that goes back to telling him to get out of my head.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was. JR says, as I age, my thoughts are moving towards what could be done with the time left. And that, you know, I always say there are lots of things in life we can do, but it's what should you do? Like, what are you here to do? Not what are you here to do? We all can do many things. This goes back to the comment from Dan Burris I heard many years ago. We all can do many things, but what are we here to do? And I think as time goes by, are we here to continue to add layers to the piece we're working on, or are we here to start another piece?
Well, and how do our current layers affect that next piece?
Absolutely. Because
it does change how we even approach the next thing, because we take some of that experience that I did this way and I really liked it. I applied it this way and it really worked well in my business, and I apply that to my next clean slate,
Yeah. Jer wants to travel more with me. I think the you was me. I'm going to assume the you was me.
It might be Jim. If Jim's in your head, it could be that he wants to travel more with Jim.
Yeah, maybe Jared wants to travel with Jim. I'm not going there. I'm just
After looking at Jim's website, though, I want to travel with Jim. I want to do some of those adventures. Yeah.
In fact, on the Facebook group, the other day, somebody made a comment about Whitewater. Somebody else who does all these rafting adventures, and said, if I was ever in here, I think it was if I was ever in her neck of the woods, she'd take me. And I immediately went, no, Jim's got dibs on my first whitewater rafting experience. That one's waiting in the wings. But I may get there. Jim says, he doesn't want to travel with Jim. So a couple of things. Ellen says, I decided to work until death, and since then I feel so relaxed, no stress to get there in a hurry. I love what you said earlier, Ellen, on the other feed on Facebook, which was to relax into what you're doing, and that goes back to fighting things. And I think you do a really good job of relaxing. And Jim says, 2 years ago we had a fire and lost a big piece of our business, I remember. And it's hard working without it, but hopefully we will rebuild something even better. I hope to laugh in a few years thinking best fire ever. And I know that it can be horrible when you're in the moment, but I am a firm believer that the universe has a plan. And as many of you have heard me say, it takes courage to let go of where you've been. What do you need to let go of to get where you want to go? And sometimes the universe makes those decisions for us. And knowing you, Jim, I'm assuming that the universe has big plans and has created that space for you for a reason. Jared says, this is getting out of control. Jared says, Jim's setting me up for dinner on Saturday night. He's out. So that's all good.
Travel plans.
He echoes Jer's time focus, which I don't know whether Bob wants to travel with me or wants to travel with you.
I said group.
Travel with friends.
We're all going together.
Nobody wants to travel with you.
We're all going together.
I want to travel with you. And we all want to travel with Gina. And there we go. It's 30 minutes. I love these conversations. I love it. And it's interesting because the last few times you and I had come into these conversations with some really cool business things we wanted to talk about. Yeah. We end up having this conversation. So I promise we will get back to some really cool, innovative things that businesses are doing. But I think you and I talk about where our hearts and minds are at the moment, and that happens to be where we are. And obviously is where a lot of people are. Bob says the session goes deep. I love it. Great questions. I was amazed when I asked the question on Facebook, what are the 3 most important life questions we should continue to ask? As I said to you earlier, I could barely keep up with the feed and people are still commenting. So it's obviously on people's minds.
Yeah. Okay. So for people who want to join in the discussion. Oh, all of a sudden.
For people who want to join in the discussion.
Yes. On your, on the questions you're asking, they need to go to your group.
No, this was on my personal.
It was on your personal page.
Yeah, it was on my personal page.
I thought it was on the Facebook group.
No, it's on the personal page. So, and all of the people, I think most people listening are my friends on the personal.
Right there. Yeah, I'm Toni Newman.
But if you want to hear, which takes us full circle, Gina's Facebook Live on
GDPR. If deep thoughts are too much for you, if you want to ask for deep, so shallow business discussions on marketing.
Yes, on how to cover your marketing butt. Then go check out Gina's Facebook.
I want to peel that layer off already, but.
Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. One life, personal and business. Great line. Bob says, yeah, I live by that line when I'm not losing sight of it. And I had to remind myself this week. So we love you all. Have a great weekend.
Have a great National Wine Day.
National Wine Day. Yesterday was National Paperclip Day. So I'm not sure what the connection is. But there you go.
A note clipped to my thing with the paper clip that said it's National Wine Day. There's the connection.
Well, there you go. There's the connection. Have a great weekend, everybody. We will see you next Friday on Wind Down. Bye. I think we're done.
The awkward.